Taylor, Miller, Smith, Anderson, Fox. Say them out loud, and they sound as American as a county fair plane. English, familiar. The kind of name you'd find stamped on a mailbox in Ohio or a diner sign in Texas. But here's the thing almost nobody tells you. For a huge number of American families, those names are a costume. They were something else first. German, Danish, French, Irish, sometimes Jewish, and somewhere along the way, that older name was translated trimmed or quietly erased. Not by a clerk, by the family itself. And before we go further, let me kill the myth you've heard your whole life. People love to say, "Oh, they changed our name at Ellis Island." It's a great story. It's also false. The inspectors worked from passenger manifests already written at the port of departure. They checked names against a list. They didn't invent them. The real name change came afterward, chosen by the immigrant, pushed by an employer, or made official years later in a courthouse. Your family did this, on purpose, to fit in, to get work, sometimes to survive. So, if your surname is on this list, listen closely, because your ancestor made a decision, and you've been carrying the disguise ever since. We're counting down from the most common to the rarest, and I'm saving number 1 for the end on purpose. It's a name that sounds gloriously Irish, worn by a man who ran for president of the United States, and the truth underneath it was so well hidden that he didn't even know it himself until a reporter dug it up. Historians only confirmed the paper trail in the last couple of decades. Let's start. Number 10, Taylor from Schneider. Taylor feels about as English as tea and rain, and to be fair, it often is. Elizabeth Taylor's family, genuinely English stock. That's your red herring, because plenty of Taylors are exactly what they look like. But a Taylor in the American Midwest may be hiding a German ancestor named Schneider, which means literally tailor, a maker of clothes. When German families arrived, they didn't spell it out phonetically. They translated the meaning. Schneider became tailor because the two words described the same man bent over the same needle. This wasn't a trickle. Between 1820 and the First World War, roughly 6 million Germans came to America, the 48ers. Refugees from the failed revolutions of 1848 pouring into Pennsylvania, New York, and the Midwest. And in the tense years around the world wars, a German name could get you spat at. So Schneider stepped behind an English mask, a family that had cut cloth for generations, keeping their trade but shedding their language. If your name is Taylor and your roots run into Wisconsin or Missouri rather than Yorkshire, your ancestor may not have been English at all. He may have been Herr Schneider, translating himself into safety. But translation is subtle. The next name didn't hide behind a meaning. It just filed off a couple of letters and hoped you wouldn't notice. Number 9. Miller from Müller/Müller. Miller is one of the most common surnames in America and one of the most quietly foreign. Yes, Miller is a real English occupational name, the man who ground grain into flour. But it is also the landing spot for one of the largest name conversions in American history. The German Müller. Same job, same meaning. The miller at the mill. When Müller families arrived, that little umlaut over the U didn't exist on American typewriters or in American mouths. Drop the umlaut, respell by sound, and Müller becomes Müller, then simply Miller. And here's the part that widens the net. Miller quietly swallowed the cousins of that name from all over Europe. The Dutch Mulder, the French Meunier, the Italian Molinaro, all meaning miller, all capable of dissolving into the same tidy English word. Between 1840 and 1880 alone, more than 4 million Germans arrived, and a great many of their millers walked out the other side as millers, a whole village's worth of surnames funneling into one plane. American name, like rivers losing themselves in a single lake. If your name is Miller, tradition may say English farmer, but your ancestor might just as easily have been a Müller, a Mulder, or a Meunier. The umlaut sanded off in a single generation. Now, what if the disguise wasn't just a translation, but the single most common surname on the planet? hiding a dozen different nations at once. Number 8. Smith from Schmidt. Kowalski, LeFever, McAvan. Smith, the most common surname in the English-speaking world. So common, it feels like the default setting for person. And that very ordinariness makes it the perfect hiding place. Because Smith, the blacksmith, the man who beat iron into tools and weapons, existed in every culture. Which means every culture had a surname for him. The German, Schmidt. The Polish, Kowalski. The French, LeFever. The Irish, McGawan. 4 different languages, 4 different peoples, 1 identical trade. And when they came to America, translation flattened them all into a single syllable. Smith. Schmidt to Smith is documented over and over. LeFever to Smith, the same. And the Irish case carries a darker edge, McGawan. Son of the Smith was sometimes anglicized to McGowan, but tradition holds that under English pressure to strip Gaelic names, some families were pushed toward the plain English Smith instead. Where that crossed from choice into coercion, the records don't always prove, so call that part tradition, not certainty. Think of it a forge in Bavaria, a forge in Poland, a forge in Brittany, a forge in County Cavan, all their sparks landing on the same American page under the same 4 letters. If your name is Smith, you may descend from an English blacksmith, but you might just as easily descend from a Schmidt, a Kowalski, a LeFever, or a McGahan, the loudest ordinary name in America, covering for the whole world. The next name did the opposite of translating. It kept the sound almost intact and just quietly dropped a single letter. Number 7. Anderson, from Anderson/Anderson. Anderson sounds thoroughly American presidents' cabinets, small-town lawyers, movie stars. But listen to the spelling next to its Scandinavian twins, the Danish and Norwegian Anderson, and the Swedish Andersson. They all mean the same thing, son of Anders, that is, son of Andrew. And the anglicization here is almost invisible. You don't translate it. You just swap the -sen for -son, or knock one S out of -son, and the name slips into English without anyone blinking. The history is a wave you can point to on a map. From the 1860s to the 1910s, hundreds of thousands of Scandinavians crossed the Atlantic and settled in the upper Midwest, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Wisconsin, whole townships of Andersons and Andersons, shaving off letters to match their new neighbors. Picture a Norwegian farmer stepping off a boat, and all it takes to become American is deleting one letter from his own father's name. If your name is Anderson and your family homesteaded in Minnesota, your ancestor was very likely an Anderson or an Anderson, Scandinavian to the bone, one small vowel away from the old country. But some families didn't just tweak a letter. They took the German word for their trade and marched it straight into English, and there's a courthouse story to prove it. Number 6. Carpenter, from Zimmerman. Carpenter is a solid, honest English word. A man who works wood. And that's exactly why it made such a perfect translation of the German Zimmermann, which means precisely carpenter. The Pennsylvania Germans, the ones often mislabeled Pennsylvania Dutch from Deutsch, meaning German came in waves through the 1700s. And there's a documented moment that captures the whole phenomenon in one sentence. In a Pennsylvania land patent record, when a Zimmermann's name came up, the clerk reportedly noted, "That would be carpenter in English." Just like that, on paper, a German trade name became an English one. Imagine a man who framed barns and raised roof beams, watching a clerk quietly rename him after the very thing his hands did. If your name is Carpenter and your line runs back into colonial Pennsylvania, your ancestor may not have been an English joiner at all. He may have been a Zimmermann. Translated by a clerk's pen. The next name is even shorter, even sharper, a single cunning animal, translated straight out of German. Number 5. Fox, from Fuchs. Fox is clean, quick, and English to the ear. But across much of German-settled America, fox is the translated face of Fuchs, the German word for fox, the animal itself. This is pure meaning-for-meaning translation. Fuchs is awkward for an English mouth. That throaty ending doesn't sit right, so German families in Pennsylvania and out through The Midwest simply handed over the English equivalent. The clever, quick animal stayed. Only the language changed. Picture a family whose old surname conjured a fox slipping through a hedgerow, keeping the creature, shedding the German that named it. If your name is Fox and your roots reach into Pennsylvania or the German Midwest, tradition may hold that your ancestor was a Fuchs, the same sly animal wearing an English coat. And if a single word could be translated, so could a whole palette of them, because the next entry isn't one name, it's 3 colors. Number 4. Black, white and brown, from Schwarz, Weiß, Braun. Here's a strange one. 3 of the plainest English surnames in America, and all 3 double as translated German. Schwarz means black, Weiß means white, Braun means brown. And among the Pennsylvania Germans of the 1700s and 1800s, these color names crossed straight into English. Schwarz became black, Weiß became white, Braun became brown, sometimes just respelled as brown, since it already sounds nearly identical. These weren't rare oddities. Color surnames were common in German-speaking lands. A dark-haired man, a fair one, a brown-bearded one. When those families settled in Pennsylvania, the color stayed, while the German word for it vanished. Imagine 3 neighbors, Herr Schwarz, Herr Weiß, Herr Braun, walking into the same new country and walking out as Mr. Black, Mr. White, and Mr. Brown. If your name is Black, White, or Brown, and your family traces to Pennsylvania German country, your ancestor may have carried a color in a language you've never spoken. Now we cross the sea to Ireland, where the disguise wasn't a translation at all. It was an accident of erasure. Number 3. Barry. Ward and Buckley from Oberga. Maccanverd, Obuchala. Barry, Ward, Buckley. They sound English, even aristocratic. But for many Irish families, these names are what's left after the Gaelic was stripped away. Start with Maccanverd, son of the Bard. The Bard, in Old Ireland, was no mere singer. He was the living memory of a clan, the keeper of its history and bloodlines. Drop the Maccan, anglicize what remains, and you land on the plain English-sounding Ward. Obuchala, descendant of the cowherd, loses its O and drifts toward Buckley. Oberga loses its O and becomes Barry. Notice the mechanism. It's the loss of the O and the Mac, the proud markers of a Gaelic line that accidentally produces a name, the English ear reads as its own. This accelerated brutally during the Great Famine of 1845 to 1852, and under the pressure some called superism, where relief came easier to those who shed their Irish identity along with their old name. Picture a family descended from the keeper of a clan's entire memory, the Bard himself, surviving famine only to have his title flattened into Ward. If your name is Barry, Ward, or Buckley, your ancestor may have been Oberga, Maccanverd, or Obuchala, a Gaelic line whose proudest prefix was quietly worn away. One more disguise before the big one, and this time the mask is French. Number 2. LeFever/LeFave from LeFevre/LeFevre. LeFever, LeFave, LeFevre. Say them, and you might not even be sure what they are. That in-between quality is the tell these are French names respelled to survive in English mouths. The originals are LeFevre and LeFevre the smith, from the Latin faber, a worker in metal. There's our blacksmith again, but this time in French. Rather than translate it all the way to Smith, many of these families kept the shape of the word and just respelled it by sound. LeFevre became LeFever, LeFave, and a dozen phonetic variations. 2 great streams carried this name to America. The Huguenots, French Protestants fleeing persecution, arrived in the colonies in the 1500s and 1600s, and later the Acadians, expelled from Canada, became the Cajuns of Louisiana, carrying French surnames into the bayou. In both cases, English spelling slowly reshaped LeFevre into something you'd never guess was French. A family of refugees, keeping the sound of their name, even as its spelling dissolved. If your name is LeFever or LeFave, your ancestor was almost certainly a LeFevre or LeFevre, a French smith. Respelled one census at a time. And now, number 1. The name that sounds like it walked straight out of Ireland, worn by a man who nearly became president, and the secret buried beneath it. Number 1. Kerry from Cone. Kerry. It doesn't get more Irish than that. It's a county in Ireland. And it was the surname of John Kerry, United States Secretary of State, and the Democratic nominee for president in 2004. If any name on this list earned its Celtic credentials, surely it's this one. It's not Irish at all. The original name was Cone, Austrian, and Jewish. It comes from the Hebrew kohen, meaning priest, one of the oldest and most honored lines in Jewish tradition. And here is the documented story, confirmed through Czech church records and Vienna government files, and reported by the Boston Globe. John Kerry's grandfather was born Fritz Korn. On the 17th of March 1902, in Vienna, he legally changed his name to Frederick Kerry and converted to Catholicism. The name wasn't random. He is understood to have deliberately chosen something that sounded Celtic Irish. Safe, unremarkable, to bury his Jewish origins. Because in the Austria of that era, a name like Korn, marked plainly as Jewish, could cripple a man's prospects, including a military career. And the deepest twist John Kerry didn't know. The man who campaigned for the presidency of the United States had no idea his very Irish-sounding name was an Austrian Jewish disguise until a reporter uncovered the paper trail and told him. In 2003, sit with that. A name meaning priest, carried by a priestly Hebrew line for centuries, deliberately reshaped into the name of an Irish county to hide in plain sight so successfully that it fooled the family's own descendant, a man who nearly led the country. If your name is Kerry, you might be Irish through and through. Or you might, like John Kerry, be carrying a disguise so perfect that the truth underneath was Austrian, Jewish, and priestly, a secret the paper trail only gave up in this century. That's the list 10 American names, each one a costume over something older. Taylor was Schneider, Miller was Müller. Smith covered half of Europe. Anderson lost a single letter. Carpenter, Fox, and the colors black, white, and brown all crossed over from German. Berry, Ward, and Buckley lost the O and the Mac that marked them Irish. LeFever was a French Smith. And Kerry, the most Irish name of them all, was Cone. Your family made a choice once to translate, to trim, to blend in. That choice is still sitting in your name. So I want to know, drop your surname in the comments. Tell me where your family landed and when, and I'll tell you what it might have been before. Some of you are going to be very surprised. And a quick honest note where a name change is documented in real records. I've told it straight, where it's tradition rather than proof. I said so because your history deserves the truth, not a good story dressed up as one. Sources are in the description. If you found your name in here, subscribe. The next one might be yours.